What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today it is the beginning of our 3-round mock draft with trades. This will be split up into 2 different days, just like the NFL draft. Day 1 is going to be round 1. Day 2 is going to be rounds 2 and 3, so stay tuned for that because it is going to be a blast. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is my board. It is being continually updated, so TBD on everything, but it is great because we're going to be also starting a bunch of new awesome opportunities on the show coming into the new year, which is literally within a week, which is insane. So stay tuned for that. And below that, below my board, is going to be all the great ways to get involved in the community, as well as being able to take full advantage of our 2 sponsors, UnderDog Fantasy, as well as Pops. So let's get right into this. Let's have a great time. Starting out with the number 1 overall selection. This is a live mock draft. I do not plan these out because it's more fun for me and more fun for you to be able to see my thought process and be able to correct me wherever I might accidentally slip up. Because, hey, sometimes it's really fun to be told something wrong before you do it 50 times. So it's nice to be able to hear that from y'all. At pick number 1, though, I actually have a 2-round mock draft that I put out yesterday where I had the Bears trading Justin Fields and taking Caleb Williams at this spot. I am still very much open to that possibility. However, I do want to trade out of this spot. I want to be able to change some things up for the Chicago Bears. And there is a team that has multiple second-round picks, and I've just been very heartbroken that they were continually getting wins with Tommy DeVito. And I just could imagine how good they could be with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. So we're going to be trading within the NFC. The Bears are wanting to get that second-round pick back. I think the Giants would be very excited to jump the Commanders here as well and be able to select their guy. The Commanders will be sitting there waiting, and you know what? They'll be disappointed at the fact they will not have the pleasure of selecting Caleb Williams and bringing him back to the area. But at the same time, the Bears will be able to prosper very mightily. I do think that in this situation, because of the fact that I'm sure Washington will be offering the ability to move up, the Bears will be able to prosper. I'm going to toss in this as a base package for this trade. Maybe you end up stealing a player. Some people thought that you'd actually end up stealing, or sending through KT. I doubt that would be possible. Personally, I don't think that's a thing they could do. Maybe you might get Isaiah Simmons as an option in there and just see what the hell happens there. I doubt it. I mean, technically could ask from John Michael Schmitz for the Bears to be able to get somebody like that. I'm not sure. But for this situation, we are going to be opting out of that route. I do think we could toss in a 2026 second-round pick as well, but PFF doesn't allow that, unfortunately. Maybe you steal like a 4th-round pick from the Bears here or there, right? Like maybe pick 229 ends up going to New York. Who knows? But I don't think it would be a factor in any of the other trades I would do in this in the first place. So just to make it a little bit more quantity favorable for New York, that is exactly what we are going to do. We're going to force this on through. The New York Giants have moved up to the number 1 overall selection to select Caleb Williams out of USC. He's been able to handle media pressure enough. Granted, he's an awkward guy in front of the media, but naturally, I don't think the media has affected his play. I've been able to watch all these quarterbacks' worst games because naturally, as a semi-pessimist for a lot of players, I like to make sure that I understand their weaknesses rather than just their strengths, because I think weaknesses are much more exploitable at the next level and translate more than the strengths. I think Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the class. I think there is a tier 1 with him. There's a slight drop-off before tier 2 and then a bigger drop-off before tier 3. But we'll have those videos coming out soon enough. But Caleb Williams is going to be the quarterback here. I'll explain my thought process on Justin Fields when we get back to the Bears pick. But bottom line, I think if the Bears have a proper enough trade package, they'll be happy. At pick number 2, the Cardinals are sitting here. And I think this is a good location for a potential small trade back as well. I am seeing a team like the Patriots wanting to move up into this situation to select their quarterback and maybe not leave things to chance. But I also might see Washington with multiple second-round picks getting very excited as well. I don't think that I doubt that this would actually require that much of a trade up. But I think Arizona might get excited to maybe sneak a 3rd-round pick in instead. So Washington's going to send the 67th pick, maybe a 4th rounder next year. You can adjust that trade value right there. Like, again, this won't change anything in the mock draft. So feel free to adjust that. But like maybe it will be, I doubt it would be pick 100. This is about a 400-point spread. So maybe it will be multiple 3rd round picks. But ultimately, the Commanders are going to want to move up. The Cardinals are going to want to move back. And this is the price to pay. So, I mean, we could get a little bit ballsy. I would be really intrigued with the move up here with the Cardinals to get Marvin Harrison Jr. But let me know what y'all think about that. That is an intriguing option. That's a really intriguing option. But the Commanders send a small package to move up to pick number 2 to select their quarterback in Jayden Daniels. I think he is better than Drake Maye. Drake Maye has a higher ceiling, but ultimately I think Jayden Daniels is just simply a better prospect. You know, he's much more athletic. He actually is very pinpoint accurate. And that's my issue with Drake is his inconsistency. Jayden's relatively consistent. Now, a lot of these quarterbacks have an issue in terms of processing. That's been my common issue with the majority of them. But ultimately, you know, this is something I'd be willing to flex on. Jayden Daniels has the athleticism to make up for it. I do comp him to Lamar Jackson. I don't know if he'll actually reach that potential, but that is, in terms of his overall game-changing ability with his legs and the arm upside, does remind me a lot of what I used to think about him back then. But now we got an extra 3rd round pick. Hallelujah. So Arizona Cardinals are back on the board. We end up still selecting Marvin Harrison Jr. here. So we get the player that we wanted and get a little bit more. Some of y'all are going to ask, why would like Washington have to move up just one spot? And it's mainly because of the fact that I was moving down with Arizona regardless. You don't know what team actually might want to move back up. Some people even say move back up with the Bears and get Jayden Daniels. I wouldn't do that personally, even though I think Jayden Daniels is the 2nd best quarterback in the class. I'm not there, and, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, when you have other teams that will be willing to move up, I'm looking at, for example, the Falcons here, there is going to be that notion that, well, you might actually be in a situation where you need to just secure your guy. Because I think Jayden Daniels, in case the Falcons were wanting to move up that desperately, would be a really good spot for them to go. So secure your guy. It costs 2 3rd round picks, which at the end of the day could make a difference on your team. But at the end of the day, quarterback makes the biggest difference. And, you know, securing that is more important than anything. But at pick number 4, we have the New England Patriots. Just to clarify for those of mine who are visually impaired, pick number 1, we have New York going Caleb Williams with the trade up. Pick number 2, we have Washington having a minute trade up with the Cardinals going Jayden Daniels. And at pick 3, we have the Cardinals going Marvin Harrison. So at pick number 4, the New England Patriots are going to select Drake Maye. This is pretty straightforward. I know a lot of y'all have talked about going after a tackle for the Patriots, and I think that is a very viable option if Drake Maye is not on the board. I don't think Jayden Daniels would be necessarily the target I would go for the Patriots, even though I think that he is better than Drake Maye. I just feel like Drake Maye there's just an intuition. It's not an actual analytical thing. It's just a gut feeling that Drake Maye will work in New England. I might not be super high on Drake Maye, but at the end of the day, I think that what truly matters is where a quarterback is going to go, who his coach is going to be. And I think that a lot of people, including, you know, Justin Fields fans like myself, would understand that. We appreciate that about the fact that, you know, some coaches really screw up the talent of a quarterback, and, you know, getting the right coach matters a lot more sometimes than the right quarterback. So, you know, fingers crossed, I think he'll work there in New England. At pick number 5 for the Chicago Bears, they're chilling, sitting here, being able to grab Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu. Like, we added a 2nd round pick as well as a 1 and a 3 and a 2 in the future. Like, we're doing a good job here. Now, I actually am going to look at Malik Neighbors at this spot. I did some thinking, and I do think the left tackle spot could be upgraded still, but I do think that wide receiver spot is the most important. And, you know, the logic for keeping Justin Fields, because I did say I was going to talk about that, is that Justin, you see his path to success. He's already getting better week over week. He's had, I think, 6 games he's missed his entire career there in Chicago. And he still could garner some really good trade capital if he doesn't work out next year as a true bona fide starter. And if you really believe in him like I do, you might be hoping that he has another mediocre year with a positive incline to where you can sign him for $40 million a year, and then he ends up performing like a $55 million quarterback. Hopes are hopes, but ultimately, I do think Caleb is a very solid option for the Bears. I wanted to exercise something like a new option that I haven't done before, which is completely trade down and grab somebody that is not one of the top weapons in the draft, but technically Malik Neighbors is. And I just reevaluated him earlier today. I'm promising y'all, and he's moved up to my wide receiver too. I don't think he's blue chip, but that's very, very difficult to get into blue chip territory for me. Just naturally, it is very tough. So he is still wide receiver 2. He's improved his route running. I don't like the way he runs outs and ins. I call those 90 cuts. When it comes to the sharp 90s, he just can't run them. They're all very rounded, and that's my biggest issue with him overall. Honestly, that's my one issue with him, is that he doesn't run 90-degree cuts very sharply. But everything else looks improved. I appreciate that about him. He even has a release package. So big fan of Malik Neighbors. I would love to see him there in Chicago. That deep threat ability, adding almost a Chris Olave aspect to this offense there with DJ Moore. Y'all been asking for it. I wanted to be able to deliver it. At pick number 6 for the Los Angeles Chargers, again, would have loved the idea of moving up to be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr., because that would just be absolutely ludicrous. But this team has bigger issues, right? I think right tackle is a big one, but I also think that wide receiver or tight end are also pretty big ones. With Brock Bowers on the board, it's very hard to say no to Brock, but at the same time, I'm looking at a lot of really good tackles and some teams that could want to move up to get them. I mean, I'm looking right here at the Jets. Naturally, you do have 2 teams that could take tackle in front of you, but they don't have the requisite draft capital to move up. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing a team that is that desperate for an offensive tackle, so I'm going to be leaving this up to chance, or I'm not going to be leaving this up to chance. We're going to be going Brock Bowers out of Georgia for the Chargers. We can end up drafting a right tackle, probably with a trade up in round 2. Again, I'm actually going to have Amarius Mims come out in this one because he didn't travel with the team. Of course, I did just see a report earlier today that he is traveling with Brock Bowers just later. So I'm still going to toss him in just because he didn't initially arrive with the team, because I haven't done that in a long time. So that adds another right tackle, which would be very fun. But at pick number 7, the Titans, it's whether you want to play the guaranteed starter or the guaranteed starter with higher upside. This is going to higher floor, higher upside. Depends on what you want to do. And by the way that the Titans drafted last year, it just feels like Joe Alt is more of their player than Olu Fashanu is. And I don't feel like that's a bad thing. They're both excellent tackles. And I mean, I think I need to, I already moved up Joe Alt back into my top 10. Wanted to make sure that he wasn't still chilling down the blind, but Joe Alt's going to be the guy. He just feels like he's a perfect complement there for Peter Skoronski. You can't really complain about either pick, hence why I flex them so often, just to add a new aspect to this. Pick number 8, the Chicago Bears are sitting there, and I think that this is a great opportunity to trade out. You got an elite player in Olu Fashanu here. You have some really good right tackles on the board, but I do think a team should get ballsy. I mean, I haven't gone ballsy with many teams, and there's some elite right tackles available. There's an elite left tackle available. Who can get ballsy is the real question. Who's looking for a star left tackle? I mean, the Chiefs, no. I mean, if a Malik Neighbors were on the board, that could be a really fun option, right? You get that Nagy connection. It's not really a Nagy connection, but you guys get what I'm saying. Could make a small trade down here with the Jets. I want to be able to acquire maybe a 3rd round pick at minimum if I'm Chicago, minimum. So, looking at the options available, I don't really see too many teams that are looking that desperately for that left tackle spot. I could look right here at Tampa Bay and just kick, Tristan Wirfs back to right. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to get that desperate. They have too many issues. I'd prefer to trade back with the Steelers rather than trade up. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing anybody who's necessarily that much of a threat for this pick. So if the Bears are having to sit here, Jerzon Johnny Newton is a very, very intriguing option. Obviously, still in the state of Illinois. He's going to be someone who you can rely on consistently. Gervin Dexter has been phenomenal as well. I do think you can go after another edge rusher, but Gervin Dexter has been playing some really good reps there on the outside. I would actually trust Jerzon Newton to be the guy for me. So because of that, I actually am going to make a small trade down with the Jets. I think the Jets want to just secure their guy. And this shouldn't be very much at all. I think if I'm the Bears, like, I don't know if I would take the Jets 9th or their 73rd pick. I don't feel like that's fair. I'd honestly be asking for the future options, like a future 3rd round pick. You could also look for a potential tight end too, because I do think that is possible. I'm going to ask for Zach Kuntz as well. Why not? The Jets don't need Zach Kuntz. He's a 7th round pick, but he's actually someone who I really loved last year. Ended up being one of the best graded tight ends in terms of his overall athleticism. So we're going to be going Olu Fashanu there for the Jets. The Bears just get their future picks as well as a star tight end, number 2. And at this point, it really depends. Are you going to go defensive interior or edge rusher? I love Johnny Newton, but I do want to change things up. I do. We're going to go Jared Verse here. He's going to complement what you have in Montez Sweat very well. I want to start pushing the edge rushers higher, so this is a good start for that. The Falcons are sitting here a little bit out of luck. You got Bo Nix, Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, and Joe Milton. Those are the quarterbacks that you have to choose from. Again, having all the other quarterbacks return until they say they're coming out. So wide receiver is probably the best move you can make. I think you could trade back here and still get a really good wide receiver. There's one wide receiver that's left on your team after this year in terms of contracts, and that is going to be Drake London. So the question is, can you survive moving down and still get a star wide receiver like Emeka Egbuka or Rome Odunze? I think the answer is yes. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing too many teams, again, desperate to move up. There's not those can't-miss prospects. You got Jerzon Newton here, where I do think he's kind of a can't-miss prospect, but I'm not seeing any teams that are really that desperate. They're not one D tackle away from being, complete. So I could see even the Falcons making a bigger move back here, and because they'll be in the market for a quarterback, I like the idea of the Chiefs getting really gutsy, really gutsy. So we're going to actually exercise that option. We're having the Chiefs move up for Rome Odunze, because I think they need a wide receiver desperately. I think this will take a lot of draft capital. When you think about the proper amount to move up, this actually might be a little bit of an overpay. So I'm forgetting the trade chart off the top of my head, but we'll maybe toss in a future 3rd round pick instead. But we're going to acquire multiple firsts as well as a 2nd rounder this year for the Falcons, who I think could definitely use those picks properly, could actually get a top tier edge rusher back there as well. But the Kansas City Chiefs are really going to try to hit it home with a superstar in Rome. Rome Odunze out of Washington played this year with a punctured lung and a broken rib. Big fan of a player who actually puts his body on the line because he knows how much it means to his team. Again, major respect. I haven't been the highest guy on Rome, but, I'm a big fan of his personality. That's for damn sure. Someone who I definitely want in my locker room. I think that the Chiefs really do need to hammer in on these wide receivers. I think defensive interiors are easier to find for value than proper wide receivers. Rome Odunze could be that true one next to Rashee Rice. At pick number 11, the New Orleans Saints are chilling here. And I do love the idea of going Jerzon Newton. It really depends if the coaching is going to be there after this year, right? The head coach, he drafted Derek Carr. He's probably not going to replace him unless the value is right in round number 2. Therefore, I doubt that he's going to take him. I doubt he's going to take a quarterback, that is. So I'm going to do what I did yesterday in my mock draft. We're going to go Johnny Newton here. You got to get one more defensive interior on this roster that's very productive. Went defensive interior last year in the 1st round, but that was the beginning of something that was not finished with Brian Breezy. Johnny Newton pairs up with him very, very well. He is a 3-tech. You're not going to get a nose tackle out of Johnny Newton, but I wouldn't force a Tavondre Sweat pick this early. Next selection, we have the Green Bay Packers, and I purposely have kind of disarmed myself from being able to really go after a left tackle because I really wanted to move up for another Penn State left tackle in Olu Fashanu. Still have some elite tier right tackles on the board, and it's going to pain me, but I'm going to exercise my freedom here to change things up for Green Bay. Now, I will be probably re-opting for Cooper DeJean, but I'm not going to do it at this pick. I think tackle, they might just like Rasheed Walker enough. Zach Tom's a beast. Love Zach Tom. Apart from the fact he was a little bit dirty at the end of the Steelers game. Not a fan of that one. But I think interior of the offensive line might be a little bit more of an issue for Green Bay. Ultimately, that safety corner area, that's probably where you want to target the most. With three, because I'm actually having Amarius come out in this one, which is wild, but it is what it is. Elite right tackles on the board. Because I don't even have Amarius listed on my board. That's how sure I was of him returning, which I still think he will, but I haven't had him in a mock draft this entire year. So things can change. I think it's time for a team to like get their head and ass wired together, like move up for a tackle here. I do think the Steelers could be one of those teams that, might be really in the mood for a star tackle, but I think we need to see some more teams get ballsy. I think we do. And I'm looking at the Bills here, and they're a team that's been desperate for a starting right tackle for a long time. Like, they've been looking for a right tackle for a while. And this is a proper trade back value for the Packers because I will be probably moving back up with them, but they have enough draft capital for it. So we will be moving back up with Green Bay, but this will certainly require a good amount of draft capital. Green Bay will be siphoning a future first from Buffalo. This is obviously a significantly large trade, and maybe we'll toss in pick like 124. It's a little bit different when you trade 25 up to 10 versus, this range. Like maybe we'll toss in that compensatory third for Buffalo. But, we're going to be moving up with Buffalo to select a superstar right tackle in Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. Going to instantly boost that running game. James Cook, like 170 yards. You've seen that potential, and Talise is going to make it even more likely. Love that for him. Raiders, I do think right tackle is something you could totally go after. And with the two right tackles left on the board, I don't know how good we feel about going after a Bama right tackle. Just saying. I think I'll go Amarius Mims this time. You guys will have the honorable selection of Amarius Mims being able to feature himself for a Hail Mary Sports mock draft for the first time. But this team, I do think, can upgrade at that right tackle spot. And Amarius Mims at 6'7", 340 should be a top 5 pick next year. But this year, he's going to be the 13th overall selection. At pick number 14, the Broncos. Apparently, you're sitting Russ for the rest of the year. It does appear that quarterback's on your radar. It does. It really does. I think Bo Nix might be the guy that you're targeting, which is weird. But I do think it works. He kind of feels a little bit Drew Lockey to me. And he feels like a better version of Drew Lock, what Drew Lock was kind of supposed to be. Yes, his average depth of target is very low, but I do think his overall experience and his ability to command an offense, run a 2-minute drill is very admirable. He is, 8 points away, 4 points each game away from being undefeated this year. And the narrative would be completely different between these two. I'm going to go after Bo Nix. We're going to exercise the Bo Nix clause. At pick number 15, the Minnesota Vikings, well, they just lost out in Bo Nix, but we're not going to lose out on a superstar edge rusher. And you got Braylon Trice, Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, Chop Robinson. Can't go wrong with any of them. Looking at the options you have available, I think you'll bring back Daniil Hunter. So you're trying to replace Marcus Davenport. This team does feel like one that would be very excited to go after Leatu Latu at this point. I know the regime is not one to go after edge rushers early, but naturally you definitely could be in desperation for one. I've also not been allowing Leatu to go early enough in these mocks, so I'm glad to do that for him. At pick number 16 for the Arizona Cardinals. Unfortunately, we're not able to get Jazon Johnny Newton, but we traded back on an extra third-round pick in both years and am now able to draft whoever the hell we want. And Kool-Aid McKinstry's here. I could get a good corner in round number 2 and probably not going to get a good edge rusher. For me, I actually might want to get the best edge rusher available, and that would be Dallas Turner. You might like Braylon Trice because he is 274, can kick inside as well. Or you could get a boundary corner like Kool-Aid McKinstry. There's good options everywhere. You could even get J.C. Latham. Ooh, let's go full offense. Let's go balls to the wall. Come on, man. Like J.C. Latham, it is. Unfortunately, I just screwed my Steelers over because that would have been probably my dream pick for him. But that shows you that I don't give good players to my favorite teams on purpose. But J.C. Latham, we're going to send him to right tackle, get DJ Humphries the hell out of there for Arizona, and end up putting Paris Johnson back to his natural left. So just to clarify, because I don't know if I said it properly for those of mine who do have visibility issues, we got the Raiders going Amarius Mims. We have Bo Nix going to the Denver Broncos. We have Leatu Latu going to the Minnesota Vikings. And we have J.C. Latham going to the Cardinals. At pick 17 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, lots of really good options available. And you can't go wrong with any of them. You really can't. Therefore, I think it's a good spot for Pittsburgh to trade back. We have a lot of issues, and I feel confident that we'll get a top-tier corner with one of those next picks. And I still have some really good edge rushers on the board. I do think a team that might be looking for one of those star edge rushers could be wanting to move back up. I'm looking right now here at the Falcons. I think that'd be a great spot. I'm also looking at the Packers to move up for Cooper DeJean. I think it's getting into risky territory, and with multiple second-round picks and now multiple third rounds as well, I think it's the perfect opportunity for Green Bay to just move back up and just chill out. So this range of a trade will require more than just a third-round pick. I do think that we could end up snagging a second-rounder and then trading pick 117 back to them. It might be in the best interest of the Steelers, though, to pick up multiple picks because we are a little bit limited. So we're actually going to pick up the 76 overall pick as well as the 99th. Who knows? You could toss in a future fourth in there as well if you'd like. Not going to affect this mock draft. But ultimately, maybe the Steelers want to play more of the quantity than quality game. And because we are actually really good at drafting quality down the board. So we're going to see what happens there. The Steelers end up acquiring 2 third-round picks as well as a future fourth to move back 7 spots. So at pick number 17, the Packers, who just don't need, the fact is, all these picks, I don't really think they need any of them really, except for this one. We're going to go Cooper DeJean. Bottom line, Keyshawn Nixon's ass, and you're going to be replacing him both as a returner as well as a safety as well as a slot. So you're going to be getting someone who's extremely versatile. This is the best pick you can make for the Packers, and you get Cooper DeJean to pair back up with his buddy there in Lucas Van Ness, back-to-back first-round Iowa defenders for Green Bay. At pick number 18 for the Bengals, we're seeing some really good players slip here, but again, that's the NFL draft for you. This is another team I could totally see moving back, but at the same time, we could see some defensive interiors start pushing up into this range. I love the idea of Tavondre Sweat. Again, Rukaroro is the guy who I always target for this team in round number 2. It just feels like the right option. And we've had a ton of trades as it is, but there is Kool-Aid McKinstry on the board. Kind of tough to say no to Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I'm looking at the Lions right here. To be fair, I think it's a little bit early with all these corners on the board, with all these edge rushers. I doubt that they'd want to be that desperate to move up. I could see a team like the Eagles, move up for Braylon Trice or try to move up for an offensive tackle. Not seeing the value there for them. But it is possible for sure. By the way, I talked about this yesterday. The font was weird. They finally brought the font back. So hallelujah. I could see the Commanders, though. The Commanders could get ballsy in this situation and try to move up for an offensive tackle as well. They do have multiple picks. Could try to exercise them here, but, this is a little bit too rich for a team with not that many picks. So I think the Bengals will have to stay here. And I think the smartest thing to do is to just get pure versatility. That's Graham Barton's MO. He's going to play every other position, but no. I'm going to actually go a little bit more ballsier. We're going to go after defensive interior because I let him slip too often. We're going to go Tavondre Sweat out of Texas. DJ Reader, I think he's out for the year and he might be up for a contract. So defensive interior has been a need anyways. Tavondre Sweat is 362 pounds of absolute destruction and probably will be going in the top 20 picks. So I like to feature some new players here and there. This is going to be one of those curveballs for me. At pick number 19 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kool-Aid McKinstry is still on the board, but I do think that you want to continue to bolster your strengths or, be able to get at least some contingency plans in there. Interior offensive line is huge for this team. I do think Graham Barton would be a massive plus, but I also can get that in another round. That is, given the other issues on this team. I'm going to elect for Dallas Turner. I just love the versatility. Could end up being a linebacker on your team. I've done it many times before. I'm going to do it this time as well. At pick number 20 for the Colts, I'm running to the podium with Kool-Aid McKinstry in my hand. I'm just going to do it. This is a deep corner class, so it is very possible that they start slipping. But Kool-Aid McKinstry is an absolute stud. I don't feel like that's the guy you need the most, but it is the best value for the player that you get at the spot. He's a true corner one. He's a top 10 player on my board. And I don't think you need corner that desperately, but this league requires multiple corners in the first place. So you're going to need him regardless. And the value is just too good. The value is too good to pass on. You don't always have to go for a pure need. This is, it is a need, but this is also just getting incredible value. You might say, let's go for a wide receiver. Got some great ones on the board. They're not as talented as Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I'd prefer to continue trying to play Moneyball with receivers than Moneyball with corners. You got lucky with Jalen Jones, but he was also a top, 32 player for me last year. So there you go. Pick number 21, we have the Seattle Seahawks here. And I think that this is a great spot for a trade. We do have some really good edge rushers on the board, really good receivers as well. So I'm looking for a team that might want a wide receiver one. This is the perfect opportunity for the Falcons to get their name in the game. So we're going to be moving back up with the Atlanta Falcons. I think it's right for, both parties to exercise this because of the fact that the Seahawks they don't really have very much in terms of draft capital. They could ask for this and actually swap that 75th pick. But, we actually could do that. That would make a lot of sense too. It's about the proper value for that trade. And so the Seahawks are going to be moving up. The Atlanta Falcons will essentially be moving back a little bit. So we're exercising that trade. There's still some great edge rushers on the board that I think would be great for Atlanta. But wide receiver is, it is a massive hole on this team. And I think Emeka Egbuka is the perfect example of prospect fatigue. He's just so damn solid. And it's a little bit disrespectful, in my opinion, how much disrespect he gets. He is a top 20 player on my board. He's just overall super fluid. And there's nothing that's bad with his game. He's not bad at any category. He's just consistently solid. And I think people just get bored of consistency. And that's okay. He's a great player. At pick number 22, with all these amazing players on the board, I'm still going to be selecting Keon Coleman for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're in need of an X wide receiver. They get their X wide receiver. For the Rams at pick number 23, there's a lot of really good choices for them. Honestly, we're pretty lucky at this point. And so I'm looking at Nate Wiggins and Terrion Arnold. I don't think that that's going to move the needle the most for the Rams. I think it will be Braylon Trice or Chop Robinson. Chop's a little too similar to what you already have there in Byron Young. I'm going to get someone who has a little bit more size and can also be very versatile in Braylon Trice out of Washington. At pick number 24 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we moved back. We got some extra picks as well, which is great because this team does need it. This team could be a dark horse for a center in the first round. I'm not going to do that, especially with all these really good corners on the board. I reevaluated Kalen King this morning, and I made sure to watch his two worst games, graded-wise, which is Michigan as well as Ohio State. And there's the hate on Kalen King is just so out of proportion. It's ridiculous. He is a top 20 player on my board. He slipped a little bit because, he did not have an amazing year in that Ohio State game. He had some big flaws. But, the amount of hate he gets just shows how people are going to follow a narrative until, they kind of get bored of it. So I'm going to look at Terrion Arnold here. We get our extra picks and we still get a star corner too. Again, I have a comp as a mini JPJ. So we're getting my number 8 player in the draft there at 24. I did not force him to fall here. I just think that a lot of teams would probably prefer a corner 1 like Kool-Aid McKinstry over a corner 2 like Terrion Arnold, but he gets to be the corner 2 here. At pick number 25 for the Seattle Seahawks, they get to do whatever the hell they want at this point. I do think when you have Michael Penix on the board, J.J. McCarthy, even Joe Milton, I think you could try to wait to that 57th overall pick, but you're going to be rolling the dice there. There's not many other positions this team needs, but you could go chop and just say, why not? You could go a safety here because even though Julian Love is a super stud, you will most likely be cutting one of the safeties in the offseason, and Cam Kitchens is a very good choice. Of course, one might be there at 57, so you could wait for that as well. There's a lot of really good choices for this team to make. I'm just going to go best player available, and that's Chop Robinson. I'm going to just go the best player. I'm going to say screw it. We'll see what happens. At pick number 26 for the Dallas Cowboys, we're going to select a tackle in Jordan Morgan here. Left tackle is going to be the position that I want to target the most for the Cowboys. If I see one on the board that's really talented, I'm going to pull the trigger. Tyron Smith's not going to be there forever. Jordan Morgan might even need a year to develop. But most importantly, you have the most important position on the offensive line secured for a guy in Dak Prescott who very well could be an MVP. At pick number 27 for the Houston Texans, I think that corner with Nate Wiggins is the best value here. You could look at the wide receiver room. There's some really good players here that you could select. I don't really think anybody is really tickling my fancy except Xavier Legette. But, when your team will need a corner number 2 in the future very soon next to Derek Stingley, and when you have the value of a Nate Wiggins, it's hard to say no. So I'm going to opt for Nate Wiggins out of Clemson here. Unfortunately, I stole pretty much 2 of my favorite players for the Lions here at pick number 28. I always have one of them on the board in Chop as well as Nate Wiggins. But with the Detroit Lions, could go Graham Barton. I'm going to pass on that for the time being. You could look at wide receiver. It's a very sneaky position to look at. Corner, again, I think you could move back and still... Ooh, Kalen King is here, though. He's not going to be a pure corner 1 on your team, but I think if you get somebody to be a corner 1 on your team, this guy's going to be an elite corner 2. And he could end up being a solid corner 1, but I think he could actually be an elite corner 2. So we're going to go Kalen King here out of Penn State. He's a really good run support corner as well. I don't understand where the narrative came that he's not a good tackler. He has a 16% missed tackle rating as a corner who is sub 200 who runs up into the box. He is ballsy. I don't get it. He's one of the best run supporting corners that I've studied. Genuinely an asset in the run support at a sub 6 foot frame. If you're trying to say that he's bad in run support, you probably need to reevaluate yourself. Just look in the mirror, buddy, because Kalen King has done a phenomenal job. I don't see very many corners with the ambition and maybe the willingness to go into the box that Kalen King has. So put some respect on his name. It's kind of getting ridiculous. But continuing on at pick number 29, the Dolphins. This is an easy selection for me. This is Graham Barton. Versatile offensive lineman out of Duke. You have 3 interior offensive linemen up for contract. Graham Barton's going to be an elite player at one of those positions. At pick number 30 for the Philadelphia Eagles, the edge rushers with JT Tumalau is, the edge rushers are off the board except for JT. But this is an easy selection for me as well. This is Kingsley Suamataia, swing tackle out of BYU. He's going to train up to be the future right tackle there for Philly. And I'm just super happy to see him have one hell of a future there, training for a year under Lane Johnson. He was better at right tackle, in my opinion. He lost some weight, moved to left, just looks a little bit less comfortable kicking to the left than the right, but at least he has that versatility as well in his first year. So let's do a quick little recap of the players who are still available. Looking at the quarterbacks, we're still having Michael Penix slip, and I think that's perfectly valid. He has had a lot of season-ending injuries. It is very possible for him to slip. J.J. McCarthy as well, someone who I don't usually have slipping out of the first. Joe Milton as well. For running backs, not going to go and reevaluate them, but some wide receivers that I think could be sneaky. Xavier Legette, I do like having him go as high as the top 20. Troy Franklin, love him. Johnny Wilson, big fan of him as well. So we're seeing some good players there, making sure that we're not missing out on anybody. The Niners will be drafting Tyler Guyton, so maybe I should just get that out of the way. But I want to just continue looking at some other positions before I end up selecting that, just so we're all on the same page. You got an elite interior offensive lineman here in Jackson Powers Johnson, as well as Christian Haynes. Again, another team that probably could use one is the Ravens, so could be open there. Corners, they're corner galore, and that's probably the reason why I'm not overly exaggerating how much I'll be going after a corner for the Niners. They're a team that's pretty desperate for offensive tackle help at that right tackle spot. I'm looking at some other tackles available. You got Troy Fautanu here. And I do think I might want to move up with Washington to just select Troy. Worst case scenario, kicks to the inside. I think that's going to, I just spoiled my next 2 picks. That's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to select Tyler Guyton here for the 49ers to be their future at right tackle. And we're actually having the Ravens trade out. I just don't think the value is proper because I think that, the Ravens, they don't need to go. They're not as desperate as the Commanders for an offensive tackle. So the Commanders are going to be moving up here. I do think it'll take probably pick 103 to move up for this range. I don't think it's going to be a full 3rd round pick. This is going to be a very, very, very early 4th. So the Commanders move up to select Troy Fautanu, guard/tackle prospect out of Washington. He can play tackle, but he's going to be an elite tier interior offensive lineman. I have him graded higher than Tyler Guyton, but that's as a guard. I think Troy Fautanu could end up being a true left tackle of the future, and it's worth taking a shot on him. Worst case scenario, he'll kick to the inside and be an elite interior offensive lineman. For the cost of an early 4th round pick, that's what Washington needs to do to protect their brand new quarterback in Jayden Daniels. So that is going to be the video. Stay tuned tomorrow for day 2, rounds 2 and 3. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.